Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules. And at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. Welcome to another edition of BOA The Revival. I've been really looking forward to this episode. The show's been back now, The Revival. I think we cleared like 110 or so episodes at this point. So it's been about 2 years, and we're fortunate enough to make a lot of new friends since we launched The Revival and brought the show back. And one of those folks is the mighty Jeff Knox, who is our guest here tonight on the program. We had Jeff on last year around this time, actually less than a year, since we're taping this show now. And that's how great a guest he was. And I was like, I want to get this guy back as soon as I can. I actually was thinking about getting you back on like in October, dude, like 6 months after you were on the show.
Yeah.
But I saw you were on like Steve Berg's show, so I like to leave a little bit of wiggle room there. So I'm like, I'll circle back and talk to Jeff like in 6 months, which worked out well because you're a force to be reckoned with on social media. And every day you're posting this UFO history stuff. For the folks who don't know, Jeff Knox, UFO historian, archivist. He's been doing this for like 30 years, I believe, and 10 years full time. He posts the stuff on social media, Twitter, as I like to call it still, Blue Sky, I think, and definitely on Facebook every day. More than one different UFO cases, stories, events, historical moments. Just a must follow on any of these social media sites. And I follow closely, so he'll post some shit, and I'll just be like, "What the?" And I'll retweet it or comment it. So when I was like, "All right, let's get you back on the show, Jeff," it took me all of like 20 minutes to find the stuff I wanted to talk to Jeff about because I had sort of highlighted all this stuff over the last year or so, just following his feed. And I'm sure there are some days I might have missed a post or whatever. There's tons of shit in there that I haven't even seen yet. I'm sure we can get Jeff back on, and we will, over and over and over again, and hit on some of these other cases. But just as I said, an absolute must follow and a great guy to chat with. So I've been looking forward to this for a while. Welcome back to Binnall of America, my friend.
Thanks for having me on. I'll come on anytime. You just got to ask. Like I say, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. There's like 5,400 plus daily posts I've done in the last 3.5 years. So yeah, even I don't remember all of it. So that's why I've got to kind of refresh some of these times because it's just so much stuff. And when I put so much stuff out every single day, it's like you can't keep everything in the head. But sometimes I'll search my own stuff like to learn about a case, right? Like I'm like, what was that about that one case? Let me see. I probably have something on that, and I'll search my own feed, my own post. Like, there we go. I did post about that. And sometimes I'll be surprised I did a post about something, because I did it years ago and I don't even remember it. So yeah, there's a lot of material on there, and I'm happy to come on anytime to talk about the stuff.
Yeah, dude.
Well, UFOs.
Yeah, you're the man. And I always am amused, too, because what I like about you, Jeff, is you're skeptical about a lot of this stuff. Most of this stuff, you're skeptical about it. So it's like you're the UFO historian, but you're skeptical, which is a good thing. You're not proselytizing. I'm always amused, too, where you'll express some skeptical opinion on like Twitter. And there's always some idiot, some UAP goofball who's like, you learn the UFO history, buddy. And I'm like, do you know who you're talking to? Kid? Son? Do you know you're talking to Jeff fucking Knox here? This guy, he knows his UFO history. You don't fucking get the fuck out of here. So to those people, and you know what I'm talking about, Jeff. You get those people who are like, you need to read up a little bit more on the history of flying saucers, Jeff Knox. It's like, all right, dude, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, pretty much regularly I get such people, replying. It's like, yo, bro, check my profile page. Like,
yeah, it's funny. It's really like, yeah. It's like, oh my God. Now, I feel like this is going to be dated by the time this airs, which is going to be like in, late March or April. But I've seen you respond pretty passionately to the events of the last week or so with the fucking Obama making a fucking joke about aliens that turned into Trump getting his panties in a bunch because he doesn't like anyone stealing the spotlight. So then Trump was like, first implied that Obama making a joke about aliens was somehow fucking illegal, which then got everybody all fucking worked up. And then Trump's like, I'm going to release all the shit. And then the media is like, oh, wow. And it's like, this is a non-story. This is this declaration doesn't apply. This is like the Amelia Earhart thing where they're like, yeah, everything's been released, or all the stuff that could be released has been released, or that they made it into a law like 2 years ago that this was supposed to happen. So, but the media is just breathlessly covering this. And I've seen you sort of passionately respond to this. And as I said, this probably will be kind of dated, in like 6 weeks when this airs. But for the record, I mean, just sort of air your grievances here on this, because I'm in total agreement with you on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like you pointed out, it's a non-story, right? Like Obama was on this guy's like show or podcast or whatever. And apparently the format of the thing was there was like a speed question round where you ask like a quick question and like they respond with a quick answer. And there's no like further back and forth about it. It's just like, quick question, quick answer, and that's it.
Yeah.
And he pointed out, and Obama in this speed round basically said, hey, aliens are real. Then he proceeded to say, but, we don't have them in bases underground at Area 51. Like, there's no bodies or spaceships. Like, he hasn't seen any actual evidence of them.
Right.
And to me, and I think anyone thinking critically would listen to that. And, well, obviously, he just said he's talking about like alien, like life in the universe is probably real from a statistical,
Yes.
so large that it's almost certain that there's life out there. And the fact that he, followed up with, that he hasn't seen any evidence personally of this, like there was no, alien bases, or underground bodies being kept anywhere. But he had to then come out because people hyped that all up in the media. Clarify, like, no, I'm just speaking statistically here. The universe is large. There's probably life out there. And so, as you pointed out, Trump, doesn't like anyone else getting attention, and he particularly dislikes, Obama getting attention.
Yeah.
And he's particularly kind of clueless and ignorant about what's going on. And so, he accused.
It was the perfect storm, dude. It was the perfect storm. I was like, I'm sitting there watching this all unfold as a guy who writes about this shit, and I'm like, no, literally, I'm like, thanks, Obama, thanks, dude. Like, I love you, man, but you just fucked up my whole. Keep this guy out of my fucking deal.
You just started something, dude, and So he, accuses him of like somehow releasing classified information, which is like how is saying that alien life, is like statistically likely classified. It's not. And so the thing is, he makes this promise, like he's like, I'm going to direct all the government agencies to look for their UFO files and release them, and not one news agency that has covered this story, from CNN to Newsweek to ABC to Fox, has pointed out that all these government agencies were already required by law to do this 2 years ago.
Right.
Like the 2024 NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, which was signed by Biden in December 2023, required all government agencies to look for any UFO, UAP files or human intelligence files and have them sent over to the National Archives for review, for public disclosure and release. And that's kind of what they've been doing. The National Archive has been releasing new files over the last couple of years. And so right now, all we basically have is Trump saying he's directing them to look for these files, which they've already been directed to do, and nobody's pointing that out. Right now, we don't have an executive. We don't actually even have an executive order. We have a tweet on Truth Social. Is basically That's it. There's no executive order saying they're going to disclose and declassify all the files. There's nothing of that nature that we have seen so far. And everybody's gotten so hyped up about it. You've got everybody in the UFO media circle is all hyped about this. You know, all the usual people that have been, you know, saying disclosures coming, like Steve Bassett and Ross Coulthard and all these people, like, this is ground changing. This has never happened before. It's like, what do you, like, have you guys forgot about the last 5 years? Like,
right.
we've had multiple hearings. We've had documents released. Like, it's like you guys are willfully being ignorant to the UFO topic of just the last few years.
Right. And these are like supposed to be the experts and shit. Yeah, it's ridiculous, dude.
So I pointed out, like, you know, you probably shouldn't be listening to these experts. They're getting all hyped up about this Obama, Trump, you know, alien nonsense, because it's nothing, and it's not going to be anything, you know, and until we see, you know. Because the thing is, he's not going to just declassify everything uniformly, because the truth is, the stuff that's classified, has been pointed out by people, you know, like at Arrow and in the government, isn't the aliens. It's, you know, our systems. It's our camera systems. It's our intelligence apparatus. That's the stuff that's classified. And so he's not going to, like, just release that out to the public.
Right.
So it's, I think people have gotten their hopes up, and they got really kind of, some people got excited thinking that he was going to mention UFOs at the State of the Union. Yeah. And of course he did not at all. And that kind of, again, shattered a lot of people. And so it's
right. Well, in his defense, he only had 2 hours to talk.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't squeeze it in the 2 fucking hours. The aliens. Yeah. It's frustrating. We're over the same mind here, that it's just like, oh, come on, man. Like, are we really fucking that dense? Like, do you know, the only thing that really has piqued my interest, and I don't know if you saw this, is that someone bet a shitload of money on one of those Polymarket things that the government's going to release, you know, disclose aliens by the end of the year. Like, someone dropped like a ton of money, where it's like, oh, is this some kind of inside thing that someone knows this is going to happen? But then it's like, oh, there's a lot of people that have a lot of fucking money that might just fucking have thought that, you know, that this could be, you know, Elon Musk could drop. It's like, you know, it's 150 grand or something like that. He could fucking, you know, he wipes his ass with that. So it's like, you know, anybody in it. But yeah, but that's the other thing that I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. But even then, yeah, I don't foresee some kind of big alien revelation. But who knows? Could be wrong.
And it's probably going to be the Polymarket. You know, there was this previous Polymarket bet of the same thing, and somebody actually won it because they considered, like, Arrow dumping another report on their website, like disclosing UFO information.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so, like, it's remarkable to me that sites like Polymarket and Kashi and those sites are allowed to exist. Like, they allow people to gamble on pretty much anything. And then those companies actually pay people to spread disinformation on social media to manipulate the results. And somehow that's legal.
Yeah.
But apparently it is.
Look, man, if there is any sort of phrase that captures the essence of this modern era, it's somehow that's legal, right? It seems like that's fucking pretty much the era that we live in. The somehow that's legal. Wink, wink. Of the 2020s. But yeah, let's get into the cases here. I got a whole shitload. This is just from following you since the last time you were on Binnall of America last April. Shit that came up, interesting cases that I'm like, oh, this is really weird. So I guess we'll go, since this is airing like in April or whatever. I guess we'll go forward in chronological order. So we'll start like with June, you know, because that's the closest so we'll go like in reverse from what I sent you. And the first one this was one that you and I had a great chuckle over. This is the close encounter with the wingless craft, June 19th, 1968, Rocky, Oklahoma. And what's noteworthy about this is there's a fucking picture in Blue Book that is like someone from the government fucked with the picture and like drew these two witnesses as like yokels with scars on their heads and funky like fake tattoos and shit and all kinds of weird shit. I remember you posted it and I was like, I'm like, what the fuck is the deal with these two guys? And we went back and forth and kind of solved this mystery that someone from Blue Book fucked with these pictures.
Yeah. The pictures, they got them looking like, a couple of good old boys they've got, colored on glasses, like shades, and like stashes, and like a beard stash, and like their t-shirts got like mother written on it, and like hearts and an arrow, and like you said, making them out to be these real kind of like yokels. And these were the files that are actually in like Blue Book. If you go to look them up, that's what you're going to actually see is like these guys like all looking like this. But no, as you point out, somebody at Blue Book sketched over it and kind of like, did these boys dirty a little bit and made them out to look like this. And it's not even the first time. There's a picture of Kehoe in the Blue Book files that somebody put a Hitler stash on him. And you can find it so obviously some of these people at Blue Book were having a little fun with things, drawing over the pictures and stuff.
Like when they did that in 68, did they know, like, was this for internal use only, or did they know these things would eventually get out to the public, or was it like, oh, it's fucking, just doodling at the desk, like, oh, no one's ever going to see what I fucking did to these two dudes?
Yeah, I don't know if they ever thought people would see them. I mean, it took a while for, the Blue Book files to kind of get released, many years later on microfilm. But yeah, I don't know if they were thinking about the Freedom of Information Act back in 1968 and that anybody might ever see them doodling all over witness photos, but they did.
It's pretty crazy. And is there anything significant really? That's, to me, being sort of like a fan of the absurdity of it all, that to me is the most noteworthy part of the case, that the people from Blue Book fucked with these photos and entertain themselves with it. But is there anything particularly interesting that you find about the case in general?
I mean, it's a pretty kind of simple case of like kind of a light that they saw. They were, like I say, they were at a farm out in Rocky, Oklahoma, when they see just kind of this bright white kind of wingless object kind of descending near these kind of nearby telephone wires. It says kind of like looks like the full moon, but it kind of moves horizontally on the farmyard, and it kind of supposedly has some lights kind of around the object as well.
Yeah.
And besides for their dogs barking at it, and they think it's going to crash, but it doesn't. It kind of moves off apparently over a silo and kind of disappears. That's about it. It's really, like I say, it's not that remarkable a sighting, but that kind of one key element, of somebody choosing to like draw all over their faces kind of means it's one of those cases that stick in my mind. Like,
right.
I have thousands and thousands of cases that I posted. Like I mentioned, I can't remember everything, but the cases that have some weird, like key detail like that, kind of sticks in my mind as that's one of them. In my mind, that's the kind of the good old farm boy kind of case.
Yeah. And for the people listening, when I post this episode, we'll find a way to get the picture in there somewhere so people can see it, because it's a crazy ass. Like when I first saw the picture, I was like, who are these two dudes? And then we kind of you and I went back and forth on Twitter and kind of realized, oh, wait, no, someone fucked with these pictures. Then I was like, oh, someone from Blue Book fucked with them. That's even weirder. It's just, it's a crazy thing. Now, then, so we're going chronologically here over the last year since I last chatted with you. So then one of the things that stood out that I mentioned to you at the time, June 24th, World UFO Day. You're a June 24ther. You are passionate about this. I remember now on Twitter. You because a lot of people don't know this. There's two World UFO Days. In keeping with the ridiculousness that is the UFO phenomenon and ufology, there are two World UFO Days. One's June 24th. The other's July 2nd, I think, for Roswell. But you are in favor of World UFO Day being June 24th, correct?
June 24 makes more sense to me because that's the day of the famous Kenneth Arnold sighting that truly kicked off the modern UFO era. Like that's kind of what got stuff going in the newspapers. And so that's why I think June 24th is the best option. Some people have started to celebrate June 2nd because of the Roswell incident.
July 2nd.
Or, sorry, July 2nd.
Yeah, don't confuse me. We can't have a third day in here, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And because of the Roswell incident, and really that's because we don't really have the Roswell incident was mostly like they found debris, but there is a sighting related to it, and that was by a couple called the Wilmots. Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot kind of saw an oval object pass over their house in Roswell on July 2nd. And so for some reason, people have decided to also celebrate World UFO Day on July 2nd. But for me, it'll always be June 24th because, like I say, that kicked off the modern era. That kicked off the flying saucer era. People interested in UFOs. If we're being honest, people didn't even know about Roswell till 1980 when, Dan Friedman and whatnot came out with their books.
Right.
So I just think celebrating the real kind of start of the modern era is the better way to celebrate World UFO Day. But hey, if people want to do July 2nd or both days, have at it.
There you go. Yeah. No, I see your reasoning on that one, because it is like, well, no one even knew about Roswell till the 80s. So it's like, and then June 24th really did kick off the whole craze. It's like, that's the Kenneth Arnold thing. So yeah. So no, it makes sense to me. June 24th. Now, next one I had. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there's even, another day that's like International Contact Day. That was kind of a contactee thing. And that's where the Klaatu song, calling.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Space. That's actually a quote from this kind of thing that you were supposed to kind of like, I guess, what's the word? Meditate or, send out kind of like CE5, send out. On this specific time in March, I think it was 1953. So there's a variety of days, that people can celebrate. So
I think there's an alien abduction day too. I gotta look that up, but I'll let you know. But I'm pretty sure there's like that, or alien appreciation day or something like that. It's like, okay, this is all right. I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, any reason for a holiday, There's whole websites where you can look up like what holiday is it today, and there's always like dozens of things on there like for what today is. And there's one I looked up, and there was like just a random day, and there was some alien UFO thing. I was like, what? Like, I don't remember what day it was, but I was surprised. Yeah, people, there's a lot of days you can celebrate. I wonder for the alien abduction, what day they would pick. Would it be like a famous abduction case like the Hills, or is it?
Yeah, I would think.
Day they pick.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not the Hills, because I know that one. I'm pretty. I wouldn't. It's New Hampshire en masse. I know it's in September, and I know that the abduction day is like, I want to say it's like around this time of year too, but it's not connected to the. It's not connected to the funky song day either. So it's a. Now let's talk about. I think we have we could have more, honestly, but I know for sure we have like 3 hoaxes here. For some reason, I don't know. For some reason, the hoaxes delight me tremendously. And when I see your posts, if it's a hoax, usually I'm like, oh, shit, tell me more. So I think the first one we have is the Little Man of North Carolina. I believe this one's a hoax, right? The Little Man of North Carolina, July 21st, 67, Pamlico County, North Carolina. Let's talk about this one. Let's tell me about this case.
Yeah, so this case happened on July 21st, which happens to be my birthday. Of course, this was a few years before I was born. And it involved a 14-year-old boy named Ronnie Hill in Pamlico County, North Carolina. And he takes this photo of basically what looks like a little man in front of kind of an egg-shaped spaceship. And he sends this photo to a New York magazine editor looking to get some publicity. And somehow the photo ends up in the hands of John Keel, who ends up talking to Rodney Hill about the UFO that landed kind of in this backyard, supposedly. And Keel gathers like a bunch of affidavits from like his teacher, this kid's teacher, his parents, like the 4-H, to all, verify this kid's like supposedly on the up and up and legit or something. And he sends it to like professional photographers, and supposedly they can't find any evidence of a hoax. We just kind of, so many hoaxes have been analyzed by supposedly competent photo analysts and photographers who determined that they're not hoaxes when they most definitely were hoaxes. So at this point, I don't put a whole lot of credence in, what somebody else might say about a photo like that. But anyway, so they can't find any of the hoax, but eventually Keel comes to think that it's, and really what most people come to conclude is that it was just a small model that the kid took in front of like an egg, like on the grass or the ground, and he took kind of like this photo. But it's kind of a classic photo that's gone around ufology because it kind of shows, little egg and a little silver kind of looking spaceman, that kind of, almost looks like this piece of art I had a girlfriend in high school make me, a little figurine statue kind of thing. And it's just a pretty simple photo, and it is a hoax. But like you, I think the hoaxes are kind of fun. It's important to learn about them. Hoaxes do happen. A lot of people like to say, like, oh, the hoaxes don't really happen that much in UFOs, but they do happen, and there's a lot of cases that actually have been hoaxes. And sometimes I think we can learn more about a hoax, than we can about a blurry blob in the sky or somebody that just saw a light, we can do it that, so, and again, a lot of times when you have a case involving, I hate to say it, but involving a kid, you gotta, wonder how legitimate it is, and I do think in this case, it was a hoax.
Did he ever cop to it being a hoax?
I don't think he ever actually admitted it that I'm aware of. I wonder if anyone's ever talked to him again in recent years. See, that's the thing
what I was just wondering. If he was 14 in 1967, he might still be around now.
Yeah. So I think that's something that, people could do. There should be more follow-up, with some of these old people, because some of these people, like you say, they're young, they're still around, and maybe they'd be willing to, finally admit it. There's, a couple of these other hoaxes that we're going to talk about. I'm not sure if anybody actually admitted it eventually either, even though it's been pretty conclusively determined as a hoax. But it would be nice to talk to these people and see if we can get them on the record saying, hey, I do admit it was a hoax. My bad. Just having fun. Because, who's going to hold it against them? A 14-year-old kid or whoever, people having fun. I'm just admit it.
No, it was I think that people, that's like straight out of the Brady Bunch, right? The kid was, Greg Brady was like hoaxing a UFO. That was the whole plot of the episode. It was like, I think that it might be more prevalent than people in 2026 might realize that, like, when this craze was going on, people, it's just human nature. People were like fucking around with each other and faking these things. Yeah.
And as we'll see in one of these other cases, like sometimes it's credible people pulling off the hoax. Sometimes it's, master or a cop, or military. There's just because somebody, has some sort of like, credentials, like, you might, the kind of common wisdom a lot of people have is like, what reason or motivation do they have to pull off a hoax? Like, they don't need the money but there's a lot of reasons people do hoaxes that don't necessarily come down to money. Sometimes they just like fooling with people. Sometimes they like the attention that it gets. I'm sure there's some people that have pulled off hoaxes that still get a crack out of it today, watching people pass their hoax around and they're like, I did that. So I'm not sure if we talked about this, but there was a case up in Canada that it was like the 5th or 6th generation now. They have the coins. It was like, okay, you can tell that they're starting to dig deep on needing extra. They blew through all the majors, so they, the 5th or 6th year of this, they put out the coin, and then some guy was like, I knew the guy who lived next to the hospital, and he it was New Year's Eve, we were fucking around and accidentally made this thing look like a flying saucer, and
kind of like blew up the whole thing after the coin came out. It was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's the Dorian Kendall case in Duncan, British Columbia.
Yeah. It's pretty that's an interesting example of like, the guy heard about it, saw the thing came out, and was like, well, I hate to be that guy, but yeah, we kind of made this happen by accident.
Yeah, it's and the funny thing is when people come out and admit to the hoaxes, a lot of people still refuse to believe that that's what happened or that was responsible. There's the famous Council Bluff case that Jack Valet has talked about with the slag or debris that they supposedly found. And there's a guy that admits to hoaxing it, using like a railroad thermal lance and like some slag and stuff. But, people don't believe that. So really, even when you do come out with the hoax, there'll always be some people that refuse to accept that it was a hoax. Even if the rich person comes out and says, "Hey, it was a hoax," it's like, no, they were made to change. There's been multiple cases where people have claimed that when the person came out and admitted it was a hoax, is because they were forced to admit it was a hoax. They were made to do that, even though it's not really a hoax. And there's cases where somebody's done that, change their story and admit it was a hoax, only to later change it back again and say, "Oh no, it wasn't really a hoax. I just said it was a hoax." And it's like, but really at that point, if you change your story so many times, dismiss it in the first place because it's not very credible.
Yeah, I haven't followed the trials and tribulations of the Travis Walton story, but what you're describing sounds like something that went down with that whole scene where one of the guys like had a falling out and was like, "Yeah, I hoaxed it." And then it was like, "I didn't really hoax it. I was just mad and said that." And it was like, wait a minute, dude, what? Now I don't know who to believe at all about any of this shit. So
you muddied the waters regardless. So
yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to track down that guy or find out even, like I would love to see more follow-up on these cases. I always kind of complain about that on the show with folks. I'd love to track that dude down in Pamlico County. I don't know. I don't have his name in front of me, but
Ronnie Hill.
Ronnie Hill.
I tried to track down those two good old boys from Rocky, Oklahoma. I figured they might still be around, Brent and Jerry. And unfortunately, I believe Brent died. I had messaged the Jerry guy on Facebook, and I've done this a few times. I've messaged people on Facebook that I believe are the witnesses from a case. I did that with the case here in my own town of Vancouver. I'm trying to get a hold of the main witness. The mothers died back in the 90s, but the children are still alive and still live in the area. And I've yet to actually get a response back from anybody, wanting to talk to me about, their old UFO case. But I keep trying. But yeah, it's Ronnie Hill. Might have to see if we can see if that guy's still around,
Yeah, for sure. Now another case you mentioned, because you said you had a long thread for it. I'm kind of more interested just in your opinion. Everybody knows this case. We don't really even need to go over it too deeply. I'm talking about the Flatwoods case. I'm looking at the. I got one of the lanterns from the Flatwoods Monster Museum. I got it right here on my desk. I'm looking at it. I'm a big fan of that case. It's a fun case, and it's like
there's a lot of cool merch.
Yeah,
a lot of cool merch for it. Like there's there's these cool kind of collectible designer toys, I don't know if you're familiar with things like Kid Robot, kind of like this designer vinyl toys that you collect. I'm a big collector of those. In fact, my storage unit is like half UFO stuff, half designer vinyl toys. I spent way too much money collecting over the years. But they have ones for the Flatwoods monster case. There's like this cool kind of this artist, I think in Japan, that makes this cool glass kind of like art thing for the.
Yeah. Well, you got to get to. Have you been to the museum?
That's one place I have not been. My travels to the eastern part of the U.S. Have not been as extensive as my travels on the western side of the U.S.
Oh, dude, you would It would blow your mind. It's a really cool place, and it's like, holy shit, this is for such a weird one-off moment. It's like, yeah, it really kind of has captured the imagination in a way like that very few UFO cases have. And but you're very skeptical. I mean, I'm pretty skeptical myself. I'm pretty cynical, but that's kind of a tough nut to crack because it's got so many people involved and everything. It's puzzling to me, but maybe you have an opinion that might, be contradictory. But what do you think? What do you think of the Flatwoods case?
Yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned, as mentioned, I'm kind of a more skeptical kind of dude. So one of the explanations for it was that the light kind of object that they initially saw that evening was just a meteor that was going through the sky, and there's a lot of reason to believe that because there was pretty much a major meteor flap that night seen all across the southeastern United States. I mean, just tons of news articles over several states of people seeing, bright meteors across the sky.
Yeah.
And so the argument is that they got excited by this light in the sky and they kind of followed it out to this, area where they, saw this kind of creature that was kind of hovering, and kind of had this kind of almost, some people describe it as robotic, almost with like robotic kind of hands, but like this big kind of headdress or kind of teardrop or almost kind of shaped like headdress over like these glowing eyes. And there's like a really classic kind of a sketch painting of it, that's kind of been shared around over the years. I tend to think, and a lot of people may disagree, but I tend to think they just kind of got overexcited. They got a little bit of hysteria after seeing this cool light going in the sky, and they ended up seeing a barn owl of something of that nature. And really, there was, some people, it was really, again, it was two children. It was basically three children that initially kind of went out there. And then they went back and got the mother of, two of the children, Kathleen May. And she followed them out there with another couple neighbors and a National Guardsman. And again, they also smelt something like this kind of horrible kind of like stench and smell kind of out there. And supposedly there was some kind of like black slime or something supposedly on the ground as well. But a lot of it is, it mostly is the kids that first saw it, and then they went and got the mother. And I tend to think that it can be explained by a meteor and a barn owl. Now, there's a guy named Frank Ficino who put out a book called the Braxton County Monster. And he kind of hypothesizes that incident was one of just several going on that night, basically a UFO battle with our airplanes, across the southeast, and that the one that like went down to Flatwoods was perhaps damaged from fire from one of our, aircraft that were sent out to intercept like these lights in the sky. And so he puts out a pretty extravagant narrative around, these other meteor light sightings around the Southwest, and tries to tie them all into the Flatwood Monster case, and that they're all part of like this kind of, war with the aliens over the Southeast that night. But again, I think the strong evidence that most of the lights people were seeing that night, across the whole southeastern U.S. were meteors, were documented as meteors. I believe there's even photos of like some of the meteors that people saw. And so you have to ask yourself, is it a coincidence? Did aliens just happen to visit, Flatwoods when there was also this major meteor event causing sightings across the Southeast? Or did they just get overexcited by a particularly cool looking meteor, and these kids were hyped up and go out there and they see, glowing eyes, in the dark, and, oh, it's a monster, and go and get their mom. So I tend to think it has a prosaic explanation, but it's one of those fun cases, and it is one of my larger threads, because it's been, covered extensively. It's kind of one of these classic UFO cases.
Yeah.
It was, it's been they did a dramatized version in that Project Blue Book series, from several years ago, where they kind of dramatized it. But
did they? I have to look that up.
Yeah, it's not accurate, but none of those episodes were all that accurate. But
right. Well, it's interesting if you think about it too. It's like we were talking just now about like Roswell happened in 47, didn't come along until the 80s, right? But like if you look at it, the Flatwoods fucking thing happened 5 years after Roswell, and that did fucking capture, that did fucking, was covered contemporaneously when it happened. And Gray Barker kind of was there to, it's very interesting. It's like, with all due respect to Stan, I love him, God bless him, but it's like some interesting parallels there where it's like Gray Barker kind of boosted up this Flatwoods story. The UFO people of the time boosted up the Flatwoods case, and not in a dissimilar way to what Stan later did with Roswell. It's sort of an interesting parallels, if you will.
Gray Barker and Ivan Sanderson.
Right. Yeah,
was one of the first kind of people on the ground there to interview the witnesses, and Sanderson, is he's known in the cryptozoology circles, obviously, because that was kind of his thing. He started SITU, the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained, that published a whole newsletter, a magazine called Pursuit. And I've actually looked at some of Ivan Sanderson's files, but yeah, you can actually, there's a recording of Ivan Sanderson. You can find in my thread of him, talking about the case and how he went there and investigated it pretty much immediately. And yeah, so yeah, it made the media. Whereas, as you mentioned, Roswell at the time, there was the brief public, publicity that it got about them finding a flying disc, and then they published the thing saying, "Oh, that was nothing," and it just kind of died. Like nobody again talked about Roswell, until Stanton Friedman resurrected the case, in 78, 79. So
yeah,
but yeah, this case went everywhere. It's pretty popular.
Yeah, it was like one of the original sort of iconic cases. Now I got two here. I'm trying to figure out. I didn't really put it in my notes here. I don't know why I have. I got the catfish-like creature hoax, October 16th, 1973, Eupora, Mississippi, and then the next one down is the Falkville entity police chief hoax, October 17th. 1970. The next day, the next day in Falkville, Alabama. So I don't know necessarily the Falkville entity is more famous. That's the one that looks like a dude covered in tinfoil, right? Yeah. So like I said, I'm not sure why I pulled the other one there. Maybe just besides the point that this is crazy. That this is how we're talking two different hoaxes. One in Mississippi, one in Alabama. Clearly, this is before the fucking internet or anything. These people had no idea that. So that's just how prevalent the hoaxing was.
You also have to remember what happened right before both these hoaxes is the Pascagoula event a couple of days before. Which
gotcha.
Got a lot of publicity. And so there's a lot of cases that popped up around, the Mississippi, Alabama, around Pascagoula kind of area at the same time period. In addition to, Hicks seeing the Pascagoula thing, there's a little boy supposedly the same day that saw a similar monster allegedly. So there's the whole Pascagoula thing kind of kicked off this whole kind of like flood of people alleging to see things, and some of them are pretty fantastical, like this catfish creature hoax guy, which involved a cab driver kind of named John Lane.
Oh, now I remember. Yes, okay, I remember. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, so this cab driver, John Lane, is driving, and he sees kind of this 50-foot wide bluish object hovering a few feet above the highway, supposedly kind of suspended on a beam of light. And this is in Eupora, Mississippi. And his engines and headlights supposedly fail. This object lands, and another object hovers near it, kind of illuminating that first one. Out of this object, this catfish-like creature emerges, and it's got flippers for hands and a wide mouth and kind of feathers on his back. But as you mentioned, he kind of admits a few days later that this incident was a hoax, and he was just kind of trying to get attention.
Right. That's what I loved about the story. And now I remember why it caught my attention when you posted it. And I was like, because the guy, like you go through the case like you just did. Then at the end, there's like a newspaper article where the guy's like, where, the headline's like, cab driver admits story is bullshit, got out of control. And the guy's just like,
backfired. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like a supposition. It's not like speculation that this guy hoaxed it. It's like right there in the fucking paper where it's like, cab driver admits he made this story up, and it got way out. It grew beyond his fucking, what he intended. It got beyond Eupora.
Yeah, and that's the case with a lot of hoaxes, is that somebody will tell a story intending it only to perhaps be for like some close circle of friends, and those people then go and report it to the police or the news, and it gets in the news, and now this person is finding themselves in the news, being interviewed by the cops over this story, and it's like, hey man, it just got out of hand, and sometimes people, like this guy finally admitted it's a joke that backfired. I think some people kind of feel like they get trapped in the hoax and they continue perpetuating it for decades, or et cetera. Like they feel like they can't finally admit.
Oh, I'm sure
it was a hoax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. Especially like, yeah. And I mean, like, look, I don't know what the legalities of it, but like you're just saying, it's like, okay, what if the cops talk to you and then you keep the hoax going while you don't want to admit to the cops you faked it, but then now you have to lie to the cops. So I think that is like, you get in trouble for that. So next thing you know, it's like, oh man, I'll just stick with the story. Right. Yeah.
Time or something of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a case of a hoax that was done more recently in like 2009, I believe, in New Jersey. And it was a bunch of, I think it was a great hoax. These kids were basically trying to show like kind of how unreliable eyewitness testimony was. And they released these balloons with lights like in New Jersey. And they ended up, they got charged for it and fined, and like, it sounds like disturbing the peace or something. They got charged for doing this hoax, and to me, I don't understand. I don't think it should be illegal to release balloons if idiots want to think that they're UFOs with lights on it,
Yeah.
But somehow, because it got media attention and it was in the papers and people were out looking at the skies, like they decided it was too much. And I don't remember what they fined them, like $500 or $1,000 or some fine for like disturbing the peace and whatnot. But those kids actually they filmed the whole thing from like when they first started to like the end. So they documented the whole hoax process and put out the videos, showing why they did it and what they did it for, and to make the point. So. Yeah, so it's feasible you could get in trouble for a hoax.
Nowadays,
in practicality, though, I think a lot of people just like, once you say it's a hoax, they just want to forget about it. They don't want to admit that they were taken in and fooled. So,
That's true.
And why are you going to spend money? Prosecuting somebody for lying about a UFO sighting? There's better things to do. Right.
Yeah. It all depends on the community. And, I'm sure there are some places where they'd be like, we got to make an example out of you for fucking, I don't know, for embarrassing the police. You know what I mean? I think that's really what it's about. In some ways.
And then, going into our next case here, Falkville, the Falkville. Yes. It was, in fact, the police chief himself that pulled this hoax. So, you mentioned this case, this police chief supposedly responds to a phone call of a UFO that somebody saw at the outskirts of town, allegedly. And out there, he sees this kind of like 5 foot tall creature, 5 foot half tall silver suited creature in his headlights. Kind of like you might expect like a flame retardant fire suit looks like.
Yeah.
And so he gets out of his police car, supposed to talk to this creature, and he snaps a Polaroid photo of it. And I guess he turns on the lights of his police car and the creature runs away. And he pursues the creature, but somehow the creature gets away from him. And the photo basically becomes a big news story. It's published everywhere in papers all around like the U.S. People, this Falkville entity case, look at this. Again, we got a picture of a spaceman finally. But people that investigated it, including some nightcap investigators, basically immediately suspect that this thing is a hoax. And again, I don't think he ever admitted to it, but I believe the theory is that there was a friend he had, and him and him were kind of like practical jokers, and he was kind of in on it and dressed up in kind of one of these fire suits. And Nightcap actually like took photos of somebody in a fire suit to show like a comparison photo. And I mean, there's some similarities. Obviously, the Falkville entity photos kind of a little bit more blurry and, grainy and degraded because it's, taken the night and whatnot. But so it sometimes, it's actually the cops like pulling the hoax.
Right. Yeah.
In this case,
yeah.
it was the police chief.
Yeah. And presumably, like you said, it doesn't seem like he ever he didn't lose his job or anything after that happened. So it's like, I assume he probably was kind of like, all right, I just want to let this go away.
Yeah.
But you still see the pictures. You still see the pictures of that thing fucking like float around online all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you, because it was published everywhere, not just papers. I mean, it was in Playboy magazine, back in the day. So it's a pretty famous classic photo. And again, this case and the catfish kind of case both happened days after the Pascagoula incident, which also kind of went everywhere in the media at the time.
Yeah.
So sometimes, particularly when you get these kind of almost copycat kind of like cases that happen directly after a famous case hits the media, you got to be kind of skeptical about it. But there, two hoax cases. The Falkville one has persisted throughout ufology. Nobody knows about that catfish case. It's more of an obscure kind of a case that happened at the time period. But there's they're not the only cases around the Pascagoula event of people alleging to claim to see these entities or these like silver suited robot spacemen with claws.
Well, do you have do you have thoughts on the Pascagoula case? Because that's another one that's got like, I mean, in my mind, it's a pretty good case. I'm not saying it's a fucking alien or whatever, but it's like, oh, all right. It's kind of, what really kind of interested me too was, I don't know if you saw this like a few years ago, they found like the recording of the guys like in the box or whatever it's called, in the interrogation room or whatever. And like, they were still recording it. And like, they were talking like they didn't know that anyone was listening or whatever. And it was like, they were still on the same page of like, what the fuck happened, trying to figure out what happened. So it was like, okay, well, they didn't break character when the cops left the room. And I mean, maybe they thought they were being recorded. I don't know, but it seemed like they didn't necessarily think that was the case. I don't know how up on that kind of thing people were back then. But to me, when that kind of came out, I was like, well, that's an interesting layer to the story that like, maybe if it wasn't an alien, then maybe they were as confused and bewildered by what happened as anybody else. But I don't know. I haven't really done a deep dive on the case in a long time. What's your take on Pascagoula?
Yeah. So about that tape, like, well, it is true that a couple of years ago, it was going on in the media that this tape was recovered of them, being in the police station. That recording's old and it's been on the internet for like 30 years.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't just recently recovered, despite
Weird.
Going around a few years ago. It's been part of the Wendy Connors faded disc audio collection for decades.
Interesting
that you could get. So it's an old recording. But yeah, it's interesting because, like you say, that implies, at least, they might be confused about what's going on. I know people don't like psychological explanations for cases, but I think in the Pascagoula case, I think you have a situation where one, they've been drinking, and you have this kid that is kind of in a subordinate position to the older man, the older witness. I believe he was like living with him or something, or
I didn't know
and all this other stuff. And I think the kid was probably just kind of confused, maybe didn't remember as much as he thought. He was just kind of going along with what the other guy was saying. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think alcohol was involved, and it was just
all right.
Yeah, so I'm again, it's a fun case, and I'm going to be called a nasty negative debunker now. Well, that's okay.
No.
I've been being called that my whole life, so. But, Yeah, I think that maybe maybe they saw a light or something, and kind of when they came to, kind of it was, I don't know, waking kind of dream, or kind of a alcohol hallucination, and the other kid was just kind of like shocked and scared and didn't know what to do, and kind of went along with it. But and if that's the case, I think it would be, again, the maybe Charles was drunk, or maybe he was even making up it, but I don't know. Like I say, it's I think there's probably a psychological explanation for that. Supposedly there's other witnesses that saw lights in the sky. There was stuff in the newspaper, and the more recent documentaries on the Pascagoula case. There's somebody that came out several years ago saying that they saw a light that night, the same night in the same area as well. But I'm always personally skeptical of these witnesses that come out, that kind of come out of the woodwork, 30 years after the fact.
Yeah.
Years after the fact. Like, even if you may have seen something, how certain are you it was on that night at that exact time? Like, how do you know that? Like,
Yeah.
I'm skeptical about the kind of corroborative witness that they've developed in more recent years. And I've listened to the hypnosis tapes. Philip Mantle and I believe Irene Scott recently put out a book that there's an audio book that includes a lot of the hypnosis tapes that were done with both of them over the years. Yeah. And in my opinion, a lot of these hypnosis people were leading them pretty heavily, like Martin and some of these other people. Like, I was kind of shocked listening to these tapes, other hypnosis tapes, because I felt they were just really leading this guy, like, on where they wanted to go. So again, I think it's a case that's been also contaminated with hypnosis, over the years. And they were hypnotized by multiple people. I believe James Harder from APRO hypnotized them. In later years, like Kathleen Martin hypnotized them. I think there's a good 4 or 5, I think, different people that hypnotized the Pascagoula witnesses over the years. So
Interesting. All right.
I like fun cases like that. I like cases with occupants because they're fun and they're entertaining. I'm not sure how good evidence they are, because in these cases, all we really have is a fun story, right? There's not a whole lot of evidence to back up,
No.
But,
no. I mean, like, then you get, we may have even talked about, not this, the Symington case when you were on last time. I'm kind of like anti-Symington because it's so overdone now. It's like the hipster version of it's the hipster UFO case. It's like the go-to.
Yeah, it's the case that, like, even like other paranormal people will cover, that don't do UFOs, because it's the cool kind of case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now I don't hold it against you, your take on Pascagoula, because like I said, I haven't really looked at it in a long time, and I also think, like, I am skeptical and cynical enough where it's like, okay, most anything that seems too good to be true, I'm usually like, okay, that it can't be. There has to be some. It's too good to be true. It's like, all right, there's something to it that I'm just missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think necessarily some of these cases like Pascagoula are per se hoaxes either. Like, I think sometimes the witnesses are sincere, like, with what you believe they experienced. It's not quite what happened. So
right, exactly. Yeah, and then it's like, then you're off to the races, and you got UFO experts talking to you and telling you what what you might have experienced, and it's like, okay, well, now you're going down a rabbit hole a little bit.
And the problem is the kind of like the way the human brain and memory and stuff works is, like, once you get these UFO experts and other people coming in and talking to you and perhaps sharing other stories with you, that kind of gets integrated into your memory, and all of a sudden their story starts to slowly shift and include aspects that it didn't originally include. And, like, we've seen this in cases where the initial sighting was fairly mundane, is like a light, like, in the sky. And after, the media's got involved and UFO investigators involved, that mundane sighting of Venus turns into, I think there was a UFO that landed, and I think I might have even seen occupants. Like, so
Yeah.
people, and it's a lot of times people don't mean to even do it. It's just a natural process, like your memory is not like, a tape that, records it perfectly and then you can just recite it perfectly. It gets, retaped over, every time you tell your story or repeat it or get new information from external sources like the media or UFO investigators. So it's, so
It's a. Is there any? Because quite frankly, as I was thinking about this question to throw at you, it's like I can't quite answer this myself either. So if you don't have an answer, I don't blame you. But is there like any case that you're like, okay, that's like the best case I can that one really stumps me in a way that I can't quite explain? Because like right now, just off the top of my head, I can't really come up with one. But I don't swim in the depths that you do with these cases. I mean, you've looked at hundreds of cases, if not thousands. So is there any one in particular that you're like, okay, that one keeps me up at night?
I mean, none that keeps me up at night. I mean,
well, it's a figure of speech.
There are cases, the problem is that, as I said, there's a lot of cases that are interesting and perhaps even unexplained or that you have trouble explaining, but it's kind of more because we lack enough information to actually
right
something. Yeah. And so there's a lot of cases that are like, well documented and are very interesting, and I might not be sure what it is, but I'm also not sure that it's anything truly anomalous because there just isn't a whole lot to go with. One of the cases I mentioned is the Minot Air Force Base case from 1968. Yeah. It's really one of the most probably heavily documented cases like out there. And there's like radar screenshots and there's multiple witnesses and all this like interesting stuff that's kind of really hard to explain. But again, like every case, there's also flaws with it, such as when the case was first kind of talked about, people got the dates wrong on it because the witness misremembered when he was trying to tell the story, later on. And so then they eventually had to find the case files years later and realize that the dates were wrong and that it was looked at by Blue Book at the time. And so, every case has problems. I'm not convinced at this point. Like if you ask me, do I believe any of these cases might represent something such as like aliens visiting us? I don't think the evidence exists there. But there are cases that, it's like we wish we had more information to go on. But at this point, they're so old that it's doubtful that there's really anywhere we could go with them.
Yeah. No, that's a fair assessment, dude. That's the same assessment that you hear from like, Blue Book and then Arrow and shit, where they're like insufficient data. That's half the problem with this, the UFO phenomenon, where it's like insufficient data. We don't have necessarily, we don't know all the information about what happened here. And if we did, we might be able to explain it pretty easily.
Yeah, cases of the low information zone, because there's been cases that at the time were considered unknown, unexplained, even considered great best of cases, like for example, that Great Yukon case in Canada in the 90s, where people saw a giant UFO mothership over like Yukon, Northern Territories, Canada. We now know that was almost certainly a rocket, kind of a satellite like reentry coming over the sky. The famous Charles Whitted sighting, which is a classic case of ufology, where the two pilots saw these lights when they're flying their plane full of passengers. It wasn't until some like 16 years later when the Zond 4 rocket was coming over and people, they had witnesses draw sketches of what like a rocket reentry kind of looked like. We realized that, wait a second, they almost all draw them like these cigar-shaped craft with windows and things like exactly like the Charles Whitted sighting. And so there's been cases where, they used to be considered great cases, but once we learned more information, we're able to determine, well, actually, that case is not, an unknown. That case is almost certainly a meteor. And in the case of Charles Whitted, I believe even people like Kevin Randall now acknowledge that case is not a UFO case. It's a meteor case, and it's, if you look at the sketches and compare it to sketches of people that have seen meteors or, debris re-entering the atmosphere and breaking up, they all draw them fairly similarly. These long, elongated cigar-shaped objects, and many times they have windows that they think they see. And every time there's these kind of like mass siding events like that of people seeing these breakups like over the atmosphere, and you hear like thousands of people in the UK saw lights in the sky last night, and it turns out it was Cosmos rocket. Those people inevitably draw what looks like spaceships. Sometimes they even say they claim to see what look like occupants in the windows.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it was a meteor. It was like without a doubt a meteor. So sometimes we can get more information and come to a more definitive conclusion. But many times we can't because it's just so old or the information doesn't exist, like people, talking about Arrow and the recent, like the UFO videos and radar tapes. And, it would be great if there was stuff for the 2004 Tic Tac event that they could look at. But as Arrow's pointed out, well, that stuff, that was a long time ago. It's been wiped out, erased. Like it just doesn't exist anymore for us to even look. So.
Yeah.
Stuck in some cases,
Well, it's very irritating too. I mean, it's hard. Like, you're a historian and archivist, so it's like hard to kind of like, you need time to pass in a sense to fucking kind of have an appreciation for these cases and collect them and shit. And it's like now it's very irritating nowadays that like the cases that you hear about are all fucking these military shit. You know what I mean? It's like you don't really get it. We're not getting enough wacky shit from the middle of nowhere. America, even if it is, even if they are hoaxes, I'd rather a wacky small town sheriff in Falkville, Alabama, taking a picture of his buddy in a fucking in a flame retardant tinfoil suit. That's, to me, that's a lot more fun than a blob on a radar, which I think is just some kind of artifact or whatever, or
yeah, exactly,
something prosaic.
And you're right. We really don't hear a lot of like cool UFO reports like that like anymore. It's back in, I think probably the last major cases that made any sort of impact in the media are things like Phoenix Lights in 1997. Maybe
Stephenville.
Stephenville. Maybe that
and O'Hare.
O'Hare. Maybe also that, like, to a more limited extent, that Southern Illinois police triangle case that's been covered in some documentaries that David Marler looked at, but that's not didn't get anywhere near as big as say O'Hare. So really, it's been it's been 2 decades since like there's been any really cases that made really any sort of major impact in the media nationwide or even kind of worldwide.
Yeah.
The way cases are reported these days is just it's not the same as it used to be, right? Like back in the day of all these cases, you had things like MUFON and NICAP, right, and NAPRO that were around, and they'd have guys on the ground investigating these cases, like the next day sometimes, or even like the same day, and the media would be there, and the stories would get in the media, and then that would get syndicated. That just doesn't really happen nowadays. People, if they see something, it's like it's a boring line in the sky or something, and they post it to TikTok, and they don't even share it to UFO organization, anymore, really, So I guess some people might report it to Enigma with their little app, or or
the National UFO Reporting Center, but
some people still report to the National UFO Reporting Center, but yeah, it's there's also just no way for those cases. There's probably so many cases of what we call limited merit that there's nobody really to investigate them. Like, and it takes if there is something of merit there, somebody has like an entity encounter, an abduction, you got to thoroughly investigate that, and it takes time to get out there. And at this point, there's not a whole lot of publications that publish UFO stories, like, outside of maybe the MUFON Journal. There's just really not UFO magazines anymore. There's not UFO newsletters anymore.
Right.
Unless you get on News Nation or something, talk your story to those guys, which does happen, I guess, occasionally. I guess they've covered some people's UFOs.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
even then, it just, stories don't make the impacts they do anymore.
Yeah. It's kind of a bummer, man.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer. Well, let's go to another story because we want to change the mood here. This one's from January 20th. This one really kind of stuck out to me. It's from Mundrabilla. I want to say probably it says WA, Western Australia. I assume that's yeah, that always confuses me. Australia is very confusing because it's like Western, this part of the country is also a state and the same name. The Knowles Family UFO Incident. And I had never heard of this case till you posted it reposted it because back in a couple months ago, back in January. And I remember what stood out to me is I'm looking at the picture and it's like the family in the car and the UFO's like over the car. And the lady's like reaching up and like touching the UFO. And I just like, as I'm scrolling through Twitter, I see this thing and I'm like, is that fucking lady touching the UFO? What is she, crazy? And then, then I get into it and I'm like, yeah, she reached up and fucking touched the UFO allegedly. So that to me was like, and apparently, and then I pointed it out to you. I'm like, this is a crazy story, dude. And you were like, yeah, this is like one of the big Australian cases that I'd never heard of. So let's talk about the Knowles Family UFO Incident.
Yeah, so this happened in Western Australia, and the lady Faye Knowles decides apparently, and it's kind of a weird story, to just up and take her three sons on a cross Australia trip, and that's a long drive. Like Australia is a big country; it's like 4,000 kilometers or something like that. Yeah. It just out of the blue decides to take her three sons, on this trip. They barely pack any clothes. They just basically hop in the car and just start going on this drive all the way from Perth, Western Australia, and their end goal is to get to Melbourne, Victoria.
Okay.
And so this happens, in Mundrabilla. I think that's about. I don't know how it's they've been on the road for a long time at this point. It happens at about 4 something in the morning. And at this point, her son is actually driving the car. I'm not sure his exact age. Like, I want to guess maybe 18, 20, something like that.
Yeah.
And he sees this bright kind of egg-shaped object ahead of him on the road. And he has to swerve to miss the object. He then says this egg-shaped object begins following the car. At some point, he kind of does this U-turn to kind of try to approach the object. He kind of like flips the U-turn on this highway. Okay. And this is a real desolate kind of area. This like is called like the Nullarbor Plain. And there's like, they do like drag racing out there. So, I mean, it's like just, if you imagine probably like the flat areas of Nevada, just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's some real desolate parts of Australia.
Real desolate kind of area out there. And so he does this U-turn, I guess, trying to approach the object. And his mom, I believe, in the back seat or I think the back side seat, and that kind of sleeping because it's 4 a.m. And they kind of at this point are awake, kind of disoriented, trying to figure out like what's going on. And so they roll down the window of the car, and this kind of grayish black mist kind of enters into the car. The mom's kind of confused. So, hey, what's going on with this? So she reaches out her window, tries to kind of touch up above the roof, and she kind of feels something up there that's kind of warm and rubbery, and it's kind of covering her hand in black dust. They hear a thud on the roof, and they think that their object has kind of lifted the car off the road. So they're supposedly, I guess, let down slowly, and their rear right tire blows out. And at this point, there's another guy on the road, a truck driver, and he's kind of driving ahead of the Knowles car. And supposedly he sees a light when he's kind of looking in his rearview mirror at about the same time period. The family, shortly after the truck driver kind of pulls into this truck stop in Mundrabilla, and the Knowles family kind of also arrives there in Mundrabilla in a state of confusion. This truck driver inspects the car. He sees the dents in the roof. He smells burning, burning sensation. And he and another truck driver drive them back to the scene of where this supposedly all happened, and they find skid marks and footprints kind of on the ground. So when they're in Mundrabilla, they kind of then report to this police station in this town called Seduna, who then notes their distress and the dents in the roof. And they take samples to be collected for forensic analysis and sent off to the lab. And the police test turned out never to be done, but a ufologist in Canada and Australia named Keith Basterfield ends up getting samples of it, and they have it analyzed by a lab. And of course, it's like most things, an ordinary kind of materials, that you would expect, not that too fancy. The TV station in the area also pays for analysis, and again finds like nothing really too unusual about it.
Yeah, because this was 1988 now, so we're talking like this is relatively, I mean, we're old, you and I, but yeah, relatively recently. Like if it's in my lifetime, I consider it recent. So, so 88 was like I remember 88. So all right, yeah.
Yeah, and they and so because it's so recent, we've got like news coverage of them, talking.
Right.
Channel 7. One of the interesting things about this case is, so Channel 7 that analyzed some of the samples had them on to interview them, and they were paid $5,000 pretty much the day after this happened for their interview. And I believe they were provided with a car and then were transported, to Melbourne, their final destination, while the car stayed in the location. And they then proceeded to request thousands of dollars, anybody that wanted to ask questions. Apparently, even the ufologists wanted to ask questions, but they didn't have the money to put up to ask the guy these questions. But you can see news footage at the time, and they're pretty, her sons are, I think one of them is like early 20s, and the other is like maybe 18. And so they're, young, but not that young, and, kind of like you might imagine 80s kids, like one has, like, I think long hair, and the other, and, listen to them talk. I'm not all too convinced by their story. A lot of the samples that they collected and were analyzed, shared, I believe, a lot in similarity to things like brake pads and road dust that you kind of get like on the road.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I think if I had to explain this case, being somebody who drives a lot at night and has gone on many a road trip on a night, there's been many times where I've almost hit something on the road and like, oh, what? What's going on? I think this kid probably was distracted, maybe zoned out when he was driving. Maybe hit something on the road. And if you look at the tire, it's basically the whole side wheel is kind of ripped off, like it got kind of punctured or whatever. I think the tire just kind of went out and he lost control of it and went on the road. They supposedly the only, like I said, the only corroborative witness was that one truck driver. Supposedly they saw other truck drivers, but there's actually a policy for truck drivers out there on the Nullbury Plain that if you see people that need help on the side of the road, you do not stop to help them because they could be hijackers.
Yeah, robbers or whatever. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
So supposedly there's other trucks that went by, but nobody stopped to help them out. But so it's an interesting story, and there's a lot of really cool, like I said, there's that cool illustration with this kind of egg-shaped object on the top of the car, and the lady reaching up to kind of like kind of touch it. But when you dig into it, a lot of, like I say, a lot of the case, the other people in the car were actually asleep and didn't witness all of it. Like they kind of like woke up at the tail end of it and are mostly buying the primary witnesses kind of like story. So, and I'm again skeptical of the money nature, how they immediately sold the story to the paper or to the news station, Channel 7 News, ABC News, and requested money for all the interviews that they did. Yeah. So it's fun, but it was a major case in Australia. It had its impact. I shared with you online that Dunlop Tires did a tire ad, kind of poking fun at the case, saying if only they had Dunlop tires, maybe they would have, the car would have stayed on the ground instead of being lifted up, because they got such good grip. The irony being the car did in fact have Dunlop tires. So I don't know if the people who did that knew that or not, but the car did have Dunlop tires.
That's wild. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a great kind of a video on YouTube people can watch. I linked to that. It's like 40 minutes long. That's got a lot of news coverage of them and shows them like the car and the interviews with the kids that with the witnesses. And
Yeah, like I said, I'd never heard of that case, and it's pretty, fairly modern. It's pretty wild. I can see why they, would get a lot of attention back in the day. Now, I was looked up my birthday through your thing, and I found this one here. Did a creature land in Jacksonville? Some fucking guy claiming he met a creature on my birthday, not the actual date, January 26th. Yes, 72. So 7 years before I was born. I don't know. Maybe I'm the reincarnation of that creature. What's the story here with this guy in fucking Jacksonville of all places, claiming to have encountered a creature?
Yeah. So this case it happened. This guy Norman Chastain, and he's out fishing on the St. Johns River, which I guess is near Blount Island, Florida, and he sees kind of like this half ball of orange and blue flashing light coming towards his boat. The object hovers noiselessly overhead about like 150 feet. He turns off his light. The object then slowly moves away. After drifting to shore, he shines a spotlight into some nearby bushes and sees what he says, quote, "the darndest looking human-like creature he could ever imagine," end quote. And a brilliant white light immediately hits him, I suppose, coming from this creature, and it paralyzes him until morning. He wakes up in the morning and he notices this kind of overpowering stench on his clothes and hair, and he throws his clothes away because they're so nasty smelling, I guess. 3 nights later, he smells the same odor that he had smelled on his clothes, and he finds this kind of fungus-like growth resembling these flesh-colored heads with big teeth, big eyes, wide mouth, pointed ears that he says look just like the devilish creatures he saw the other night on the island. Now, this plant that he actually found is it's called buzzard's breath, but it's also called Collin's stinkhorn, and it's this fungus that kind of grows on decaying matter, breaks down, and it's covered in these slime covered like tips, and they attract flies, which then kind of disperse around, and you find it in the Gulf area of Florida and the South like that. And so apparently these stinkhorns that he found look just like this creature that he supposedly saw a few nights before. And the paper, publishes a photo of him, and he's holding up, one of these like little.
Yeah, he's holding it up by his face. It's so weird. Yeah,
yeah. It does kind of maybe look like it has 2 eyes and a mouth and whatnot. But yeah, it's real. Apparently, I can't say I've ever smelt them, but they're apparently real stinky. And so I can imagine if it was all over his clothes, it smelled pretty bad.
So weird. Such a fucking weird story. How I like that it was on my birthday. So that was, that was a weird one. Now, the last thing I have here, we'll kind of just, we'll bullshit a little bit more about UFOs and stuff after this. But the last story that I had here in the notes. Actually, you posted we had to bump the interview because of the blizzard that hit on Monday. So I might have even missed this one if not for the blizzard. But this story blew my fucking mind. This is the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, February 23rd, 1978. He has Jackie Gleason on, and Jackie Gleason just fucking essentially is like, yeah, we got aliens. The government knows about the aliens, and Tom Snyder's like, well, how do you know that? What's your source? And he's like, he's like Richard Nixon, dude. And but what struck me in a way was like, it sounds like this is 78. I assume the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, that must have been on like super late at night, right? That must have been like fucking on like late night.
Yeah.
So
1 a.m. I think is when they said is when the listing listed as being on at 1 a.m. Yeah.
Okay, right. So it's like how many people even saw this fucking thing? It's almost like this weirdly clearly it happened. We know now in retrospect, but it was like it must have been like this apocryphal thing that if you were fucking watching that night in February. To the fucking, and the Tom Snyder Show at 1 a.m. I mean, I can't imagine that many people were even watching. I'm sure their fucking minds were blown. And then it never really kind of goes anywhere. It's just Jackie Gleason talking shit and saying that he knew about the aliens. This didn't like spawn all this media coverage like it would today. It was just like him said some crazy shit. If you were watching it at the time, you're probably like, holy shit. But then that's it, right?
Yeah. I tried to look up to see if there's any like newspaper coverage, after it aired that talked about this. I was trying to find just really any coverage of, him being on the Snyder Show at all. And there wasn't anything like after it. Now, I don't know if it's that at this point. I mean, I guess there's a whole story about Jackie Gleason and Nixon and aliens, Kirk Collins has written a really great article on his website about. And, supposedly it comes down to ex-Nixon, ex-President Nixon, who is his golfing buddy, had showed him, something in some hangar somewhere.
Yeah. It's a long
Florida.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's interesting that it just was not covered in the press at all after this. I mean, it isn't not the first time Jackie Gleason has talked about, aliens or UFOs. In fact, there's a case from today, from 1966, where he was on, Jackie Gleason was on a show called The Open Mind with a whole bunch of people. Like Hynek and Leo Sprinkle and Menzel and a bunch of ufology people. So he apparently had quite the interest in UFOs. Apparently he had like a massive library of UFO books and
like the Dave Foley of his time.
Yeah, or Dan Aykroyd.
Sure, there you go. That might be a little. Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I just found
it. You actually,
crazy,
how much truth there's to this story. I don't know. I don't see even a president. If there were in fact alien bodies, like in some hangars or like a spaceship in a hangar, I don't think you could just bring your golfing buddy to show it to him. That just doesn't seem plausible to me. But
yeah, I mean, if we're really gonna get conspiratorial, right? My thought would be like that because Nixon had to. Okay, so let's go back in time, right? You're Nixon. Okay, you got your buddy fucking Jackie Gleason. You're gonna show him the aliens. Like, first of all, Jackie Gleason can't keep his fucking mouth shut. Like, that's problem number one, right? It's like, dude, if I knew if I was Nixon, I knew where the aliens were, and I brought you, and then fucking at some point down the line, you're out there running around going, hey, he fucking Binnall showed me the aliens. I'd be like, Jeff, what the fuck, dude? I showed you the aliens. Shut the fuck up. Like, why are you going on fucking Tom Snyder? Why the fuck are you telling Tom Snyder anything about the fucking aliens, dude? Why would you do that? So part of me is like, okay, maybe they want Jackie Gleason to run his mouth about the fucking aliens. Yeah. I mean, that's not that the aliens are real, mind you, but that they want people to fucking think that or something. They want that out there in the zeitgeist. And like, who better? We know Jackie Gleason can't keep his fucking mouth shut. So we'll show him the fake aliens or whatever, because we know he's going to run off and fucking go on Tom Snyder and run his mouth.
Yeah. An old tricky dick psyop. Yeah.
I mean, that's the only, that seems like a plausible explanation for this weird story.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what year it supposedly was that he was shown this stuff, but.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It
would have to be when Nixon was president. So I don't know what years those would be, but early 70s, I guess.
And, he didn't, he had this lifelong interest, but apparently he didn't talk about them all the time. But it was, I guess, like it was a known part of his personality. I mean, like there's like magazine articles back, 10 years, like in the 60s, of him talking about how like he believes in ESP and telepathy and UFOs and clairvoyance. And apparently he was, so he had a known interest in the weird,
I think he was like on Long John Nebel a lot, but I don't. Someone else would know, but I think he was like a regular on there. So yeah, it's certainly,
good old Long John Neville. Before there was Coast to Coast, there was the like the original late night paranormal show back in the 60s.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of crazy shit went on that show too. Yeah.
I think the Ivan Sanderson Flatwood Monster recording might be from when he was on the Long John Neville show talking about it. Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah. For some reason, that whole thing with Jackie Gleason on some random fucking Tom Snyder, I don't know. For some reason, it just kind of like captured my imagination because I could just see myself back then, being up that, late. Who's watching this at 1 in the fucking morning? You know what I mean? And it's just like, this dude just drops this insane revelation. I can only imagine because it's like before VCRs and shit. So it's like you wake up the next day, you're like, you're not going to believe what I fucking saw on fucking Jackie Gleason was on. And he fucking said this, and no one would believe you. Like, you couldn't show them. Like, they're not going to ever replay the episode. It was just like, and it's gone. It happens, and it's out. It's like a UFO sighting in itself. It happens, and then it's out in the ether, and it's like, whoa, no one will believe it. I just saw that.
I wish there was a recording of it. Sometimes there's recordings of these old shows, and like I looked, but I couldn't find one. Like I found some other old 70s episodes of the Tom Snyder show, but it's a shame that there's not a recording of it that people could watch. But you also have to remember at this point at February, this is a month after like Close Encounters came out. So maybe let's see, what Close Encounters came out December 1977, and this was February 78. So like 2 months after Close Encounters came out. So maybe there's just so much talk about aliens, like everybody was giving their opinion, that it was just played out, and that's why it didn't get any press coverage. I don't know.
Maybe. But I partially think also who the fuck was really paying attention to. Like, this isn't like nowadays where like everything that happens is fucking covered in it's like, I think back then, like shit could happen and it would fly completely off the fucking radar. You know what I mean? It's like, who's really paying attention to the Tom Snyder show back? It wasn't like someone was responsible for keeping an eye on fucking what was said on the Tom Snyder show. So like in the media, you know what I mean? It's like crazy like that.
Yeah, it just might have not risen to newsworthy status,
Right. Yeah.
What some old celebrity said on the Tom Snyder show
last night. Yeah. It's like get the hell out of here. No one cares about what Jackie Gleason's saying on. Like that guy's a crackpot. So yeah, it's crazy like that.
Some tabloid would be all over it, the TMZ, the Daily Mirror would be like, guess what he said, but
shit, I'd be all over it coast to coast. I'd have that. That's good content, baby. Anytime you can get a celebrity on a talk show talking about this shit, give me it. Put it in my veins, man. Put it in my veins. So that's all the cases, but you got a little more time to chat tonight?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, what's interesting too is it's an interesting bookend you kind of put in there. I didn't know about. Close Encounters came out around when that thing was, that Tom Snyder episode, and we got this thing coming this summer. I might as well get on the hype train with everybody else. You know what I'm talking about, of course. It's Steven Spielberg
Closure Day or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah. This is like, I'm already irritated by it. I'm already seeing people on social media like dissecting the trailer and shit. And it's like, will you fucking relax?
What do the cardinals mean? What kind of bird is it? The eyes. Is there a spaceship in the eye reflection? Can you see that? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm concerned for their mental well-being because it's like they're really reading a lot into this, and they have theories that like this is some kind of like real disclosure. I think I even saw somewhere that someone was like, "Are there real aliens in the fucking movie?" Like, no, there aren't real fucking aliens in the movie, dude.
Is this soft disclosure?
Right. It's really kind of ridiculous, but I mean,
it's entertainment, man. It's entertainment, and hey, I like Steven Spielberg. I've always liked his films, and so I'll definitely watch it. I'm like I said, I'm not as excited as other people are, like, which is a shame because like if you would have told younger me like Spielberg's got a new UFO movie coming out, I'd be like, yes, awesome, like. But just like from watching the trailer and seeing where things have gone, like I'm not as excited as I would be. I would have preferred a more direct, like Close Encounters, like
Yes.
or something.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it seems so gimmicky with the disclosure day, it's, and then there's another movie also being made by what's that guy's name, Joseph Kosinski, the guy who did Oblivion and the Formula One racing movie.
Okay.
And I believe David Grush is the consultant on that one. So it's like, again, that these guys are like, they're trying to like make these disclosure movies, talking to people like Lou Elizondo and like David Grush, like to try and basically fictionalize almost, I guess, their kind of narrative that they've been pushing. And it's a shame because both those directors, I think, are fantastic. I've loved like a lot of their movies, but it seems that they want to go down this disclosure route.
Well, it's hot right now, so gotta. Yeah, I the Spielberg one, it looks a little too. I'll just say it looks a little too artsy fartsy for me. It's a little too like, oh, we were the aliens all along, or it's the
deer's the aliens.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the deer. We're all the aliens. The deer are aliens. The fucking rabbits are aliens. The people are aliens. It's like, what? Okay, what's, and that might be even closer to the truth in a weird way. But it's like, all right, I just give me some fucking aliens.
Give me a classic UFO story. Something more. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think if it's not, if it is all heady and shit like that, I think I'll predict that the movie that there's like, people aren't going to like the movie. You know what I'm saying? I think people are going to be like, oh, the fucking movie sucks. It's it's not cut and dry like Close Encounters or E.T. Like, it needs to be cut and dry, or else I'm going to be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
Where's my mashed potato mountain, man? You need my mashed potato mountain.
Yeah.
I don't think it will have anywhere near the impact or sales of Close Encounters, for example. But that's hard to beat. How do you beat Close Encounters? I don't know. I don't think you can beat that per se. But
yeah, not nowadays. Yeah. But I think I suggested on Twitter that the movie should be aliens. They come back, but then it turns out the fucking aliens, I want this on the record here on the show, too, in case this happens. I'll be like, holy shit. The aliens are Richard Dreyfuss from Close Encounters. It's like a Planet of the Apes. They come back to Earth, and they're like, what the fuck have you all done to our planet? It's like, you're all crazy. It's like Idiocracy and shit. It's like a reverse. It's like Planet of the Apes. It'd be cool. I'd fucking, if the aliens come out and Richard Dreyfuss comes out of that ship at the end, I'm gonna be like, yes.
Yeah, that'd be, yeah. He could be, the aliens in the first one, like they didn't age all those decades that like they were gone, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can do it with all CGI and shit anyway. You can look just like a Richard Dreyfuss in the 70s. So
hey, they did
still alive anyway, yeah.
They did it for that Star Wars movie where they, which one was it? 10 years ago or whatever, where they had to do the CG version of that one evil character or whatever.
I don't know, yeah.
It's too old.
Yeah. So that's my ranting about the Steven Spielberg movie. Something you posted, I put in my notes here. I didn't send it to you because it was like I'd have to explain why I copied what you wrote, but I responded to you at the time on Twitter about this, and you had like a really profound. I forget what exactly you were. I'll just read it. Said that we were talking about UFO personalities in the UFO field. You say. The problem is people confusing UFO researcher and disclosure-ist/media personalities. None of those people were ever UFO researchers. Most of the ex-Twitter UFO community are not into UFOs. They're into disclosurism. Real researchers are still researching. They just don't get attention. And I remember responding to you at the time because I was like, yes, dude, yes, there needs to be a greater delineation between this. I really liked how you sort of crafted the word in a way, disclosurists and disclosurism. It's like, yeah, man, they're not ufologists really. They're fucking disclosurists. It's a completely different different bent to this whole thing.
Yeah, they're barely interested in cases or past UFO history or the topic. Like they're looking for the government to tell them the answers. We got the aliens, like, and that's really what a lot of the people in the disclosure community kind of come down to. It's like, they don't really even do much looking at the UFO topic itself. They're hyped up on the whistleblowers and getting the truth out of the government, and it's almost as like a separate field almost, like than people that actually study the UFO topic. And a lot of the people that actually do the UFO research, the people that are like putting in the time and doing the hard work, you barely hear them. Like like people like David Marler will get some attention because he runs his, the archive in New Mexico.
Yeah.
But a lot of the people that are actually out there doing real research, you never hear those guys. Like the people you do hear about, the people running the podcasts is like the Jesse Michaels and like the people like Corbell and people like this. Like, again, they're just, they're covering the kind of modern events as they happen.
Right.
They barely touch on actual UFO cases that aren't like leaked videos of blurry blobs in the sky doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like none of these guys, and so many of the most famous people now, like people like Corbell, for example, like that the vast majority of, like, if you ask like Joe Blow on the street if they've seen anything on UFOs recently, they may have seen like someone like Corbell on, a news show talking about UFOs. But people like that know very little actually about UFOs or the UFO topic. Like not even basics, like, like fundamental stuff that, any fan of the UFO topic that's been in it for any decent amount of time should know, because it's just, they don't really have any interest in a lot of the history stuff. Occasionally they'll dig up like a historical case if it helps fit with something they're pushing, like when the Jake Barber came out with the egg video and stuff. So everybody wanted to talk about egg UFO cases, that involved egg shapes. And so they'll occasionally mine, the depths of UFO history for an old case.
Yeah, like the UFO nuke thing, like the UFOs and nukes thing. That's kind of keeps getting rehashed over and over. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. But besides for that, they really don't have much interest in actually the history of this topic. And it's kind of sad because how can you, if you haven't even done the basic studying of the topic, if you don't even know like the fundamentals, like how do you expect to get anywhere in this topic? Like if your whole, basis is you think the government's going to tell you the truth, I hate to break it to you, but you're probably going to be waiting for a very long time, if not ever, for your believed answers. But when there's so much fun stuff in UFOs that people could be learning about now, you don't got to wait for the government to release another blurry blob video to you. You can learn about all these cool, fun cases that people had in the past that, as we pointed out, we just don't hear about people having these fun cases anymore. It's almost like ufology is, I always say that I was born a couple decades too late. Like I would have loved to been into the ufology, like in those earlier days, the days when Zines were still being published, and there's all these newsletters, and people, it was fresh and interesting. Now it's just kind of boring, and like I've said just recently that it's almost kind of a depressing time to be in the UFO topic. It's almost like a time of new dark ages, particularly with this trauma stuff, where we're kind of sliding back, to, kind of worse than we were before in this topic.
It's a bummer. I've said too on the show. I sort of delineate, there's the UFO phenomenon, UFO field, ufology, and then there's like UAP, and I put all these folks you're talking about and sort of the mood and the climate into that's the UAP. It's so separate from UFOs. It's like it's a really weird, having been in this for so long, after like 20 years, it's just really weird to look back and be like, oh shit, yeah, things really fucking changed around 2017. It's like that's really when it got this little fucking bubble broke off, and it became a whole different world where it's like there's no there's no agency there to it. It's all reactionary. It's all very like responding to what's happening. People aren't, it's like the people on Twitter and shit. And I'm sure there are some people there, but it feels like the vast majority are like, they're just reacting to shit that happens. And it's like they're not out going, oh, well, this guy, some might be in MUFON or whatever, or independent research, but no one's like, oh, this guy had a UFO sighting in my town or in my state, and I'm looking into it, and I'm trying to research it or whatever. They're just like, oh, shit, did you hear what Tim Burchett said on News Nation? That's crazy. And it's like, all right, dude, we're not getting anywhere here.
Yeah, that's why I post to Twitter, for example, but like I really don't spend a whole lot of time. Like I don't like browse hashtags, right? Like I don't click on like
right
Twitter to see what y'all are saying like during the day. Because as you point out, the vast majority of it, it's basically just copy and paste, click reposting of the current news. So it's like everybody reacting, giving their opinion on what somebody said on some news show last night or what some new podcast said today. And it's like, that just stuff really doesn't interest me that much, to be honest. Like I don't need to read everybody's analysis of today's podcast episode of what Joe Blow said. Like to me, that's not ufology. Like as you pointed out, like the whole UAP thing, that's politicized ufology. That's like, government disclosure, like politicking, like nonsense, like in my opinion. UFOs, not UAP. That's how we go around here. I don't get down with the UAP people,
Exactly. Yeah.
And to be fair, there was, I've even before 2017, I've always placed, there was Greer doing the whole disclosure thing long before 2017.
Oh, yeah.
And even back before then, I used to always tell people, even Greer's like a separate thing from ufology. Like Greer's like a fringe niche part of ufology that's not
exopolitics. They called it exopolitics. That was the whole, it was a kind of.
That's another word that people like Michael Sala and
Steve Bassett. Weber. Yeah.
And it's funny, like this Stephen Bassett had this whole thing recently about the State of the Union address on how his sources once again told him President Trump was going to be talking about UFOs at the State of the Union. His multiple inside sources that he had to immediately walk back because it never happened. And to be honest, like these people have been selling you disclosure for 3 decades. Maybe stop listening to them. Like their sources are obviously not very good because they're consistently wrong. So.
Yeah, well, there's something weird going on too, in a way where it's like I applaud their sort of like willingness to bite their tongue, but it's like, look, if I was part of the old scene, like you're like Stephen Greer and Steve Bassett and Alfred Weber, like you said, Michael Sala, it's like they've all, I think Steve Greer's got his own fucking weird shit going on, so you might be a little different, but it's like they're, for the most part, like they're all left holding the fucking bag. They were the ones saying that there was going to be fucking disclosure. They were the ones, exopolitics and all this. They were the ones who were going to usher in this thing. And it's like, boy, they got fucked. They fucking didn't get to go on. They're not on News Nation. They're not fucking going to fucking speak to Congress. It's like, wow, you did all that fucking, huffing and puffing. And boy, you got fucking left out in the cold, dude. I'd be pissed.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of jealousy going on in some of these old guard disclosurists that kind of have felt that they're not part of the party, and they're
not part of the party.
Yeah, and so they keep trying to insinuate themselves into the party, like, hey, wait a second, I'm the guy. Like, Greer tries to make inroads, but realistically, when it comes to the mainstream disclosure stuff, the government, they're not paying attention to people like Greer or, Stephen Bassett or whatnot. But everybody wants in on the game. And in my opinion, that's kind of where organizations like MUFON kind of went wrong, right? Like they stopped investigating UFO cases, started doing nothing but like political advocacy work,
right.
Government. And because they were the big UFO organization, and here's all this UFO stuff in the news, but it's got nothing to do with MUFON and UFO cases, or it's got to do with OSAP and Lou Elizondo, and all these people that have been in this topic so long. Kind of, I think a lot of them feel left out, and are trying to claim their little 15 minutes of fame and their little piece of the pie. Now that it's kind of gotten this media attention, but
right. Yeah, it's a wild state of affairs. It really is kind of like from as an outside observer, it's like it's interesting that it's interesting who gets to sit at the table and who doesn't after all these years. It's a interesting sort of
usually the least deserving get to sit at the table, and the most deserving are forgotten about. Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah. It would have been interesting to see what if this all went down like maybe 10 years earlier. I would have liked to have seen how Stan Friedman would have fared in this UAP era, because I think he it all went down and then he passed away like right before it kind of all exploded. Although who knows, maybe him passing away was kind of what ushered in this new generation. I don't know.
He's lucky not to see this generation. I don't know.
I'd be interested to see what he thought. Now, I got two last things for you. One, Jake the Alligator Man. This was some kind of roadside attraction that you saw that I want to ask you about. I vaguely remember this, but I don't know. You were talking about it. I think you went to see this thing, right?
Yeah. So in Washington State and Long Beach, Washington, there's kind of a well-known tourist kind of museum. It's barely a museum, it's mostly like gift shop and trinket shop, and it's called Marsh's. And one of the trinkets they have there is this, this roadside attraction that used to go around called Jake the Alligator Man. That was basically like it's this alligator like body, with kind of like I don't know if they used a monkey face or some sort of like they fashioned. And it's not the only, like there's been other roadside attractions of alligator people and things like this is a thing they used to do, like mutilate bodies of animals to make creatures like this, like the Fiji mermaid. Yeah. Similar in nature, only this is an alligator man instead of a Fiji mermaid. And they have it in this kind of glass case there at Marsh's, and that's one of their kind of claims to fame. I mean, it's a kind of a fun place to visit. They've got all these like carved Bigfoots, outside in front of the museum out there, and
like check that out.
Frying pan that I don't know, the world's biggest frying pan or some nonsense like that. And
love nonsense.
The kind of stuff you see at fun little roadside kind of places, but. Yeah, and they have a little. You can get a smashed penny with Jake the Alligator Man on it, and so I've got a bunch of those somewhere.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah,
love it, love all that. Yeah. And the last thing I want to ask you about, I think you're the only person I know who has a pet goose. Yeah. How's my boy Murg the goose doing?
He's doing good. He's out there squawking, doing his thing. It's He's got water again. It was freezing here, and we didn't go blizzard like you, but there's about a month where his pool, was just frozen over, and so he couldn't really swim in it. But it's been getting rain, so he's out there swimming, eating his food, his lettuce and bread.
So he just lives in your backyard?
Yeah, it's his backyard for the most part.
That's bad. Is it? Yeah, but it's like. But you're just saying that his pool fucking like froze. Where does he go at night and shit?
Oh, he likes to sleep underneath. There's like a wooden table out there he's kind of turned into his home, and he just kind of sleeps under it. And you would think that when it gets freezing, but geese are actually, if you think about it, down blankets are goose feathers, right? They're actually like kind of like well designed to be in the cold. They may not like the cold. That's why they fly south for the winter, but when they can fly, but they're actually, they can survive. And the way their veins are in their feet is that they can conserve heat. And so they do this thing where he'll stand on like one leg and they curve their other foot up into their body. And they can conserve like a lot of heat. And so they can be out there in the snow and ice like just fine. In fact, they're known to like dig through ice and snow to get to the grass underneath to look for bugs and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I got rabbits here out in the snow that I keep an eye on all the time. So yeah, some of these animals, yeah, it's like people wear the fur coat. It's like, well, what do you think the fucking the rabbit has, or the down for the goose? Yeah, so it's like, no, they're that's how they've survived millennia. They're equipped to survive out in the harsh conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, and the geese, and we used to have ducks. You don't anymore. They got killed by raccoons, and they actually like the rain. They do this thing you may have seen pictures of, where they'll just stand out in the rain with their heads facing up and let the rain pour over them, because it's actually calming. Like, they like
that
it.
So, yeah, I can see.
Yeah, it's a pretty low maintenance animal. I just I throw food out there and it scavenge insects and stuff. And
why doesn't he fly away?
So geese, they don't naturally innately know how to fly. They have to learn it from the other geese. So when you have a goose in captivity, they never learn to fly. I've seen some stories of people that have tried to train their geese to fly. It's like they'll get another one, and like there's a guy I think in Korea that has geese, and he takes them on walks, and like they don't fly, but they'll get up like maybe 10 feet, then they'll glide for like 20 or 30 feet and be able to come down again. And so he's trained his geese to glide, but yeah, it's not like other birds that just like push them out of the nest and they start to fly. Like they've actually got to learn it from another goose. And so
wild.
So he doesn't know how to fly. I actually read a story of somebody had a goose that had a goose in their backyard, and a wild goose actually flew in. That was flying above, flew into the backyard, never left. And so now these people have two geese. They've got their domestic goose and a wild one that just decided to live with it in the backyard.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Love.
But yeah, so they it's surprisingly chickens can get more air than when we had chickens. Those chickens would get out everywhere. Even the fence, they jump over the fence. Like,
oh, I bet. Yeah.
Chickens, they get a good little run on them and they flap their feathers and they can get some air. But that goose isn't going anywhere. That's his backyard and it's his domain that he's in charge of. So
I busted your balls at the beginning of the show because we were saying, oh, you got to have a website. Last time you were on, you were talking about it, and but look, at Binnall of America, the website's fucking tumbleweeds itself too. So I get it. But what's next for you here in 2026? That's the real question. What do you got? What do you got going on? You doing any presentations anywhere? You got any stuff you're going to be writing up anywhere? Anything going on you want to talk about here as we close out the conversation?
Well, I'll still be doing these daily posts for a bit. I've trying to cut down a bit on how many new cases a day, like as you mentioned, I sometimes have several new cases each day. And so I'm trying to cut that down a little bit to maybe only 1 or 2 new cases a day, because I mean, like I say, I've already got almost 5,500, posts out there. And it's getting to a point where there's some days like I have trouble finding a new case. Like I'm just having I can't find anything in the UFO literature. I'm just searching the newspaper archives. Like, did anything happen on this day? Like, so it's getting into hard to find, new cases for some days. But I'm going to keep doing that, for the foreseeable future. I still need to finish doing the part 2 for this lecture of dumbbell sightings. That I should have had done already, but just been occupied with the brother moving back in for a while and all this other stuff. And so but I've also started I've wanted to kind of do like a book for a while that's kind of just like my post, like a today in history book that's like one case for every day of the year in the book.
Yeah, good.
I haven't done a whole lot of work on it, but I've been starting to collect and pick the cases that I want to include in the book this year, so I can hopefully get that done.
You definitely should. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I think that would be cool, and that would probably be, because you got to have a book in this topic if anybody wants to take you serious,
Oh yeah, that's what they tell me. They've been telling me that for 20 fucking years, but yeah, that's what they tell me.
And unfortunately, so many of the books that come out are just not really worth even reading. They're just They don't add anything relevant or new to the topic. And so I've always been hesitant to put anything out because I just don't want to put out another generic UFO book. But I figure, if I put out a book that's like a case a day, that people can look in each day, that fits in with what I'm already doing. And so I've been picking out a cool case kind of each day that I'll include in the book.
You should. That would be cool
on that.
Popular.
And eventually, I like I said, I'd like to get a website, but again, nobody funds this work I do at all. Like it's completely done voluntary. I'm not a paid debunk. I'm not on the payroll. I'm not a paid spook. I may get accused of that on occasion, but nobody pays me to do any of this work. So I do want to get a website eventually, but. I don't know when I'll be able to get that put up, though, because I'd like to be able to have another, I mentioned before, a place that people can get my work that's outside of X and outside of Blue Sky and outside of Facebook. But right now, it's just all on those sites. And I also just want to make it so it's backed up so it doesn't get lost.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So other people have it all. And that's something like me being like an archivist and a historian. And unlike some ufologists, I actually want people to have copies of everything I have. I don't forward files and information and data. Like I share it because the more people that have copies of this stuff, the better, in my opinion. So I kind of open sourced all my UFO research out there, and so that's what I'm working on now. So
nice.
Probably pretty similar to what I've been doing for the last 3.5 years. I'm apparently a pretty boring, unoriginal guy. I do the same thing every day.
No, dude, you're doing a service. Your shit's awesome. You know that. I am a huge fan, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. Like I said, I was like 6 months ago, I was like, we had talked about half these cases that we talked about tonight. We had gone back and forth on Twitter about them. And I'm like, I got to get Knox on the show just to talk about this stuff. And then more time went by and, we had a whole show here. And this is almost certainly not the last time you're going to be on Binnall America, because I have a feeling just over the next year, I'm going to find out about more shit that you're going to post. Even if you posted it like 2 or 3 years ago, to be like, who knows? Maybe on May 7th of last year, I wasn't online, and I'm going to be on this year and go, oh shit, I never even heard of that crazy case. There's another Knox bomb. That's what I call them, these Knox bombs. And I'm just like, holy shit, I never even heard of that case. So I am an enormous fan. I can't put you over enough, man. It's been my great pleasure chatting with you tonight. And, I wish you nothing but the best, and I'll see you in the cyberverse, I guess they call it.
Yeah. And go ahead and pick some more cases. I'll come back on anytime.
Awesome, brother. Keep up the great work.
All right. Thanks.